All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our third session of the Virtual Graduate Showcase this week for the School of Engineering and Computer Science at UT Dallas. For our session today, Building Relationships with Advisors, I have the pleasure of introducing our interim Dean of Undergraduate Education, Dr. Joshua Summers. He is also a professor for mechanical engineering. So Josh, I will let you take it over.
All right, cool. Thank you, everybody. I'm assuming that you can all hear me. If you can't, well, oh well, we'll just move on anyway. So as Shantae mentioned, my name is Josh, and please feel free to call me Josh. We're going to do this more as a conversation rather than as a presentation. So if at any point you have a question, please feel free to pipe up. Okay, there's no need to sit on it. There's no value to anyone. If you have a good question, everyone else needs to benefit from it too. So in the chat, I asked, what do you think is the most important decision that you're going to make? And I am a little biased, but that bias has come from about 25 years being in academia and working with students, both my own grad students. I had about 90 of them, but also working with other grad students, both here at UTD and at Clemson. And one thing I discovered is that I have never had a student come into the office complaining about their relationship with their advisor if they picked their advisor because of their advisor. They come in and complain when they pick their advisor because of a project, because of funding, because they had money, right? And so that just starts the relationship off basically kind of on the wrong foot. So I love what Samanto wrote, choosing the right mentor to guide you. I personally think that is the most important decision that you can make. So we're going to chat a little bit about the advisor-advisee relationship and stuff like that. Chatting with a few of you already, it sounds like you already have some experience in finding an advisor. So I did my undergraduate degree at the University of Missouri. And then I stayed at Mizzou for my master's, working with a faculty member there that taught the design classes. I had done a research project for, and I had picked him to work with rather than, just the topic in general. And then I went from there to Arizona State, and I had identified basically three people across the nation that I wanted to work with. And Dr. Shah was at Arizona State. The other two were at Georgia Tech and Texas, but he was the first choice for me. So I've had experience with being advised and being an advisor, and I can tell you it's not always easy. It can be rocky, and that's when you learn the most, both about yourself and about life. So let's go ahead and get started. One of the things I like to start with is what's in a name. All right. So in the chat, how do you refer to your current advisor or your faculty or your mentor or your PI? I see that Maliki wrote choosing a good PI. This is where interaction is important. So yes, I know you all are sitting back and listening, but share with me, how many of you refer to your advisor as your advisor or your faculty or your mentor or your PI? And we will wait. There we go. As my prof, okay. I've had a student that he kept calling me prof rather than professor. All right, what else? And I'm fine. Okay, my advisor. How many of you refer to him as your PI? I'm guessing Maliki. Do you refer to them as your PI? My mentor, okay. So are all of these, do they mean the same thing? When you say your advisor, what does an advisor do? They make recommendations. Whereas my faculty, my prof, their you know, their role is teaching. Mentor, what's the role of a mentor? You know, a mentor is there to be in it with you, to help help you out, advocate for you, but not necessarily always tell you what to do. Now, the PI, I'm guessing Kaja and Maliki, you're probably coming from a more science-based, maybe in biology or bioengineering or something, where they often talk about the advisors, the mentors, actually as PIs. And PI stands for principal investigator. And that the role of PI is basically explicitly to get money. And their job is then to go out, get the money, and now you're doing their research for them. So it's a name does have importance in helping defining the relationship. When I was doing some work years ago looking at assembly lines and how do companies refer to the people that are working in the manufacturing plant. You know, some places they might call them teammates. Other places they'll call them associates. Some places they'll call them linemen. All of these have different connotations. In fact, there was one place that was a textile place that actually referred to all of their employees as hands. So basically, they were saying that the value that their employee had to give to the company was their hand, which I thought was incredibly insulting. So think about, how do you want your relationship to be? How do you want to define it? And how can you help pick the right word? Okay. There are times, you know, I try to get all my students to call me Josh. Is I look at, you know, they are engineers, I'm an engineer, that makes us colleagues, that makes us part of the same team. We're in it together. So call me Josh.
Pues, ¿me regalas un tinte, por favor? Es que yo acabo de llegar. Por favor.
A lot of the challenges, though, while I want my students to call me Josh, a lot of them are coming from different cultural backgrounds that just can't pull the trigger. I had one student, she graduated, I think in 2014, 2015. She's an associate professor, actually an associate department head at a university. She called me this summer and she started the conversation off saying, "Hey, Josh, guess what?" It was the first time that she had called me Josh. Always before it was Dr. Summers. But she had defined, you know, that we were going to be equals when she got her first NSF project funded. And so that was an important milestone for her. So now it's Shraddha and Josh. And so that works out great. So, yeah, we can think about the advisor as someone who gives advice, faculty or members of the profession. The mentor is a trusted counselor, and the PI is just a person responsible to secure funding. Of all of these, you know, think about which ones you really want. I personally would go with mentor or advisor. I personally want to steer clear of PI.
I have one question.
Yeah.
My question is, like, for example, I came from a medical background and I have a MD degree, but I am not doing, I'm not working as a doctor here.
Yep.
So just want to know how to select the PI.
So,
Like how to select
and this is going to be different for every individual, right? So that relationship, some people will think, hey, I am the PI, you need to call me PI, you need to call me Dr. So-and-so. Heck, if you go to Germany, you're going to have to refer to him as Herr Professor Doctor, sir. But when you're working closely together, and the relationship between advisor and advisee, mentor and mentee, this is going to be a long-term relationship. Right? We're talking about 3 years to 5 years, and that means that you're going to have some points in that relationship where you're going to be struggling, they're going to be struggling, the relationship's going to be strained, you're going to have some arguments. So making sure that you guys are in the right place in a relationship to be able to power through those is incredibly important. The power dynamic, some faculty will want there to be a power dynamic. Others won't, right? And so that's why it's important to know who you are and who you want to be, and understand who they are and how they can help you grow into your future state. Okay. And one tool, one trick
no,
that
my question actually is not that. My question actually is that how to look for particular research and PI. So, like for example, how to look for a particular PI of your particular interest.
so
That's my question.
well, okay. I mean, that is through basic research. I mean, for me, I did my master's with Ali Butler. And when I was writing, doing a lot of the literature review and everything, I kept coming over the same name over and over again. So that's how I knew who the top person in the field was. I contacted people in the lab that worked with him and talked to Bernie Bettig and Harshit about what it was like to work with Dr. Shah. So in terms of how do you find someone, finding an advisor, the best way, honestly, is through the research. If they are research active, they'll have lots of publications. If they are not terribly active, they'll have little publications. And so if you know roughly you're going to go to a university, like come to UTD, then you can look at the faculty websites. I would warn you that faculty are notoriously terrible at keeping up websites. The one thing that is kept up is going to be Google Scholar. So I would go look at their Google Scholar accounts and look at some of their recent papers, identify, 2 or 3 recent papers that interest you, take a look at them, read them, and then set up a time to chat with them. But that is, assuming you kind of know where you're going. If you're even more clueless and you don't know exactly what domain and discipline you want to do, it's going to be even harder. So you need to narrow that down even more. Assuming that all right, there is a university that I'm going to pick on Clemson, where I was for 20 years. If you wanted to study engineering design, there are 6 or 7 faculty at Clemson that actually study engineering design. And so it gives you lots of choices. So here's a field, design, and here's 6 or 7 people that you can connect with and try to find the right for you advisor. But if you wanted to come to UTD and study engineering design, there's only one. So you're kind of locked in to working with me. And that's not necessarily a healthy thing. So you can identify schools and programs that have some sort of critical mass of faculty in an area. That gives you more choices for advisors, but it also gives you more than likely more choices for coursework at the graduate level. And I'm not precisely answering your question, Omar. I'm sorry about that, but it's kind of the best I could do right now. In terms of trying to figure out who to work with, if you have choices, hopefully all of you will have choices, then you need to think about what your expectations are, what their expectations are. And yeah, the one thing that predicts a long-lasting marriage is not happiness, it's not joy, it's not laughter, it's actually low expectations, making sure that you're not disappointed with your partner. But part of that is being aware of the expectations. So in this case, what are the expectations in terms of course selection? So if you are working with the faculty and they don't want you to pick the courses, they're going to pick your courses, but you wanted to pick some courses. So already you're at a little bit of a strained point in the relationship. Who defines the research topic? Some faculty will, give you a research topic and you work on their research. Other faculty will give you a topic and they will teach you how to work on their research. Others will teach you how to do your own research, and others will just let you do your own research. There's no right or wrong way to do it, but there is a right for you way or a wrong for you way. And so you need to figure out who you are. Start doing some soul searching. Think about how often do you need to meet with them? Think about, do you like working in collaboration with others? Right. So there's lots of different questions. If you use this QR code, it will ask you a lot of questions, but you can also use those questions to ask the faculty what their expectations are. It's not about finding, people that have the exact same expectations. It's about figuring out, where do you need to have a conversation? Maybe they don't believe that it's their job to help you develop professionally, but you're wanting to go out and you want to get a job in academia or whatever. And so you're looking at them to help you. They're saying that's not their job. Great. If you know that up front, you can shift and you can find secondary advisors or mentors on the side to help you with some of the other stuff. So you don't have to have everything balled up into one, but you just need to know what each other's expectations are. So these are some of the responses that I got a while ago. I haven't updated the slide. But there's a spread. Everyone has different expectations. So, for course selection, some people are thinking the advisor and some people are thinking it's the student. And that's fine. It's just, what is your expectation? What's your advisor's expectation? Where are you together? So it's always good to understand why you are here, right? And when I say here, I mean broadly in grad school. So, understand why you're here, understand who you are today, right? If we're all engineers, and I would venture to say all of us are, then we need to think about designing and engineering our future, right? And our future state is what we're moving towards. To do that, you have to understand where you are today. So it's, what is the gap? What is it that you need to change? Where is it that you need to grow? What is it that you need help with? Okay. And quite frankly, I would even start with identifying what your legacy is going to be. Now, are you going to grad school because it's expected of you? Are you wanting to do a PhD because it sounds like a whole lot of fun? Are you wanting to, you couldn't find a job, so now you're looking for another degree? I mean, there's all kinds of reasons. They're probably not the strongest reasons to go to grad school, all right? understand who you are, why you are here, and be ready to ask the faculty about how they can help you with that. Now, I like suggesting to students, and I'm going to use air quotes here, and in the recording, hopefully that got on the video. I would suggest that you date multiple different faculty. Now, when I say date faculty, don't ever actually go on a date with any faculty. That's just gross, okay? When I say date, I mean, when you're trying to figure out if you're going to enter into a long-term relationship with someone, you need to get to know who they are. Part of that getting to know is through multiple interactions, not just a half an hour Zoom call and then, yep, we're ready. Let's go. Let me work with you. I would have multiple of those meetings. I would even stretch it out. And so if you were dating someone, before you propose to them, before you declare that, you know, they're your boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever, oftentimes you wind up meeting their friends and family. So out of curiosity, who are the friends and family for faculty? And I'm going to pause and actually let you answer this either in the chat or just unmute yourself in it and say it. So who would be the friends and faculty of prospective advisors? Okay, so the advisors, lab students. Any other suggestions? So if I were a terrible person, and you can check with my students, and they may agree that I'm not necessarily the kindest person. And I had convinced my grad students that they had to go pick up my laundry and do my grocery shopping. Otherwise, I'm going to have their visas revoked. Do you think talking to them, you would get an honest answer about what I'm like? Or would it be kind of a little jaded? Right? So if you're thinking about that, the lab students, you know, the students currently in the lab, if they're domestic or American students, okay, there's no visa issues. They might tell you that I'm a jerk. But if you talk to their alumni, there's probably no thumb on them at that point, and so they may give you a more honest answer. So, oops, sorry, trying to mute that. And so when it comes to, you know, reaching out to the faculty, it's totally legit and a good idea for you to ask if you can have some contact information for their former students. And if they don't have that information, what does that tell you about their relationship with their students? I can't put you in contact with any of the 90 students I've worked with. Yeah, it's probably not good. And if that relationship's not good with their past students, does that mean it's going to be likely good with you in the future? Probably not. So listen to what people say and just as much what they are not saying. Okay. One of the things a lot of undergrads say, oh, you know, the friends and family of a faculty would be other faculty. And no, that's a non-starter. Faculty will never speak ill of each other in front of students. Now, to other faculty, it might be terrible, but in general, we will not speak ill about each other. So reach out to former students, reach out to current students, domestic and international. You know, just talk to as many people as you can. Be a good researcher. I mean, if you're wanting to research, why don't you research who you want to work with? Why don't you research how they are as a person? Triangulate, use all the skills that you've learned in your master's while you're doing your thesis and apply that. All right. So, some general observations over the years. We talked a little bit about picking an advisor. Honestly, when there are problems, they picked the project and funding over their advisor. Okay, and I know that sounds hard. Okay, a challenge with that is, I'll answer that in just a second, Abhishek. You want to get, paid to go to grad school. That's a given. But there are times when there are lots of different ways to get paid. And there are different places that have different ways. And so don't limit yourself, right? Because once you do that, then you accidentally become beholden when you probably shouldn't be. Like I said, I have not had any students come in complaining about their advisor if they pick the advisor because of the advisor. All right. We talked about dating around. All right, I'm going to shift and address the question for Mr. Paul. So he's asking a question: what information should grad applicants look for about a lab, aside from work culture? I would say the beyond culture. Okay. So for me, grad school is still about growing and developing. And part of that growing and developing is learning how to socialize in a adult format. So does the lab go out for happy hour regularly? Does the advisor go sometimes and sometimes not? Does the lab have parents in the lab? So I just graduated 4 students out of my lab. And of the 4 that graduated, 2 of them had 2 kids each. And so that definitely changed the lab dynamics. And every lab, every group is going to have a different culture. And that culture will change over time. Find one that you're comfortable in. Okay. Some people are warm, fuzzy people that will give you lots of compliments. I am terrible at giving compliments. And I know that. And my wife tries to help me remember that I need to give more compliments. But if you're the type of person that needs that to power through, that may be a challenge working with me, right? That said, I also, while I have high expectations for you, I will have high expectations for myself. I never expect students to work more than me. So if I'm not working on the weekends, I don't expect the students to work on the weekends. You might want to check to see, does everyone in the lab go to the conferences, or is it only a select few? Is there a difference between TA and RAs? There's all kinds of things that you can try to tease out when it comes to a lab and their experience. Remembering that the people that you're talking to, are they going to be around for the next year? Because it's a very dynamic situation. I would even ask, how long have they been there? Because if your prospective mentor says, oh yeah, I graduate students in 3 years, but then you talk to everyone in the lab and they've been there for 6 years, what does that tell you? Okay. Another trick. So the committee, so every master's thesis and every dissertation has a committee. And every school, every program department are going to have different cultures and when they form the committees and what the role of the committees are. But if you have a strong personality for an advisor, I would strongly recommend that you get a strong committee to support you as the advisee. And that the earlier you build the committee, the earlier you define your research, the earlier you propose, the better everything is. When you're waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting to do your proposal until you have 3 journal publications, then it's no longer a proposal. All right. And so you're taking the power away from the committee, and you're basically neutralizing them. One thing to think about, junior faculty will have limited experience advising because they haven't been doing it for very long. They also tend to look back to their most recent year as a PhD student and assume that's how people need to behave. Well, at the end of your PhD, you're much more productive than at the beginning. That doesn't mean they should expect a paper from you in the first 6 months of working with them. I had a piece of advice given to me by my advisor when I was leaving for Clemson, and his piece of advice was, get through your first PhD student quickly, because you're going to mess it up. You're either going to push them too hard, you're not going to push her hard enough, you're going to make mistakes. Learn from those mistakes as quickly as you can. I thought it was kind of depressing, but a very good piece of advice. So as a student looking for an advisor, that could be a very powerful piece of information to have, is how close are they to going up for tenure? Have they graduated a student already? Is that's the basic expectation for tenure, is that you have to graduate a student. Well, if you're going to be their first student, you're going to be the guinea pig, but they also have a lot riding on you. So they're going to want you to be successful. Think about, how does that help you? Look at all the historical trends to predict the future. So, where are, all the students going? Are they going to work for one specific industry? Or a lot of, if you want to go into academia, number one, only 14% of the PhDs in the US in mechanical engineering go into academia. 86% go into industry. All right. So if that's the case, and you want to go into industry, but your advisor has only placed people in academia, is that going to be helpful? The converse is true. If you want to become a faculty and they've not mentored any students that have become faculty, well, that could be a challenge. It's not insurmountable. It's just be aware of that. Okay. So we got a question. Is it perfectly normal to ask the supervisor about funding? So I will tell you what does that imply to me. If we are talking about how I advise and how I work with students, and try to get that conversation going down that path, and you immediately go to funding, that tells me that you are interested only in money and that transaction. All right. Now, what you can do is you can, survey the people in the lab and the alumni and ask them how, were they supported? So every single student I've ever worked with, I have supported them. I've been very creative in how to do that, but that is my job, in my opinion, is to find the support. All right. So today I may not have support, but if I'm going to work with you, I will get that support. All right. So I would be aware that if you bring up funding in the conversation very quickly, it can feel like that's all that you care about. All right. I know it's an important thing. I know it is something that, yeah, I went, I worked multiple jobs while I was in grad school to pay for grad school, right? I went to Arizona State without funding, but I had two different jobs at the university within the week before classes started. So things will, there's always high likelihood that things work out. You just have to have some faith in yourself, and you have to have faith more broadly. And I say that I am an American, so I didn't have to worry about any visa issues, and I readily admit that that gave me a lot more flexibility. I was also married during grad school, and so my wife also got a job within actually within 2 hours of us getting to campus. So I had advantages, I will admit that, but when I hear a student talk about money fast, I get turned off. It leaves a very sour taste in my mouth. So I guess that kind of goes to the idea that you need to own your experience, right? So this is your experience, it's your learning, it's your growth in grad school. And if you think that you need to get more experience in some sort of leadership role, make sure that you take advantage of joining the Mechanical Engineering Graduate Association or the Graduate Student Senate or stuff like that. But you want to talk to your advisor before that to verify, is this something that they endorse? Some faculty want you only in the research lab and that's it. They don't want you distracted with intramurals. They don't want you distracted with doing service projects with elementary schools. They don't want you distracted by collaborating on other projects. And that's their prerogative, right? And if that is good for you, then it's good for you. But if you like to do different service activities, if you like to collaborate with other people, if you like to work with student organizations, then be upfront when you're talking to them about these are some of the things, the experiences I want to collect along the way. Because at the end of the day, no one cares about your GPA. Quite frankly, no one cares about your dissertation. A company doesn't hire you for your dissertation because it's free in the library. They care about your ability to ask and then answer questions, right? That is the entire purpose of the PhD, that you know which are the right questions to ask, which are the interesting questions to ask, which are the challenging questions to ask, okay? And so think about how you can build up your experience and stories that you can take with you into the interviews, either if you're looking for faculty jobs or industry jobs. I remember when I was interviewing for my first faculty job, 5 different places I interviewed with. Every single place, someone asked me about, I see that you interned with Senator Ashcroft in Washington, D.C. It had nothing to do with engineering. It had nothing to do with design or research or teaching. It was interesting. And people want to work with other people that are interesting. They want to hear these other stories. They want to share and learn from you. And so the more stories that you have that you can share, the more that you've collected, the more interesting you are, and that gives you value. All right. Now I'm trying to find my mouse. I've lost it in somewhere of my tree. There we are. All right.
So, Professor, I have one question that
Sure.
What is your field and what kind of research you are doing?
My field, my research is actually design. So we study design. We study people, we study teams, we build new computational tools. Sometimes we design things, but that's not research. We just do the design work to get paid. So that's a lot of what we do.
Is it biomedical or is it what engineering? What do you think?
Mechanical is my background. So when we talk about designing, yeah, it doesn't matter. I have a team of undergrad students working on designing prosthetics for a quadriplegic friend. So yeah, I think of design as it crosses all disciplines. But I am
Oh,
not a bioengineer. I hate blood. I think it's icky and gross, and I don't want to be anywhere near it.
okay. I'm
Uh,
just asking because I am right now working in Abbott Laboratories and I am in research and development. We are making a machine for blood testing. We are assembling it, doing the top level, and then also testing it through Python.
So that I could help with, designing some of that and structuring, and what we're more interested in rather than the doing the design is to also watch and observe and collect. Yeah, how are people designing and how can we help them design better? That
Validation.
um not just validation, but like how do you model requirements and how do you manage requirements and how do you use changes and requirements to predict other changes and requirements?
Okay. Got
So
it. Yeah.
it's a lot more than like the doing of the design work. All right. Does that answer your
Thank
question?
you. Yeah, thank you.
Um, one of the challenges that advisors have is, believe it or not, we cannot read minds. We're not clairvoyant. We don't know what is going through your head. We don't know what your actual needs are. So it's on you to help tell us what is it that you need. All right. So manage up. Think about how you can do that. All right. Now, hopefully everything goes right. You spend the time to find the right for you advisor, you do your research, you do the deep dive. But there are some things that sometimes just go wrong. Your advisor might always ask for just a little bit more. There may be delays in responses, or your advisor might not even show up to meetings. They might send you an email saying, hey, where are you? It's 1 a.m. I expect you to see you in the lab. Yeah, they don't want you to get distracted. They might say, you're not worth my time. Getting a job is not my job, it's your job. So there are lots and lots and lots of different things that will happen, right? So what do? First, I would pause and check yourself. Have you been clear with your needs and expectations? Have they changed? And they might have changed over time. Have you shared with your advisor what those changes are? If this is still not working, you might want to seek some external reflections. Talk to other faculty mentors. Like I said, form your committee early, then you have a group of faculty you can lean on. Talk to leaders, associate heads, assistant deans, associate deans, heads. Talk to other students outside of your group. Talk to other students within your group. Get a lot of different perspectives, right? And again, check yourself. Is there something going on here? Have I not been clear? And then be open and transparent. Act and do not wait. So the problems, when you stew them and you just let them simmer in the pot for a long time, they taste rotten. Okay. And so there's nothing worse than being in a bad relationship, except staying in a bad relationship, right? So you should be treated with respect. You should treat others with respect, right? There's no call for, belittling, demeaning behavior, right? If that is how that person wants to behave, they're no longer an advisor. They're no longer a mentor. I don't know what they are, but if that is the case, then, do you want to do a divorce? So this is nuclear option, right? Try to work it out, work with the other faculty, work with the departmental leadership. Sometimes co-advising can help mitigate it. Your strong committee, if you developed it early, this could be a very powerful tool for you. Remember that the faculty are going to have to live with each other after you graduate. And so this creates an interesting challenge and burden on you and them. So if you need to, you probably will have to go to senior faculty and departmental leadership. They can help with real issues, not frustrations like, Dr. Summers emailed me 5 minutes before our last meeting saying that he was running late. That was rude. Okay, that's not a real issue. That's a frustration. Remember that research assistantships are funding that go with the faculty, but TA assistantships are departmentally assigned, and they're based at the recommendation of the faculty, but they can be overridden. And you might have to restart. It might be restarting your research. It might be restarting a new university. But this won't ever come to pass if you do your due diligence and you find a right for you advisor from the very beginning. And I cannot emphasize that enough. So the last couple slides are the negative end if you don't do your homework. Okay. So are there any other questions? I know that we're at 10:53. This was supposed to be about an hour. I went through a little bit quicker than I was anticipating, but it looks like good one. Did you have a
Yes,
question?
sir. Sir, can you hear me properly?
I can hear you just fine.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to know why is there the master's funding so limited compared to the PhD ones?
So that is an artifact of universities trying to play a game, right? It's all about rankings and reputation. They look at it like masters are throwaway, PhDs are what we care about. I don't agree with that. In fact, I make all of my students do their masters en route. Okay. I actually prefer working with master students because I like working with lots of students. And I can work with more students if I work with master students. There's also in different disciplines, the recognition of what a master's degree is varies. So in engineering generally, a master's in mechanical engineering, thesis or non-thesis. Well, companies, they assume they're very similar, but if you do a thesis, you have more bullets on your resume. And you're actually a much greater value to the company if you do your thesis. So with the limited funding we have, oftentimes we direct it to where we think is going to benefit the department, the university the most. And that tends to be PhD, but the PhD, ironically, I did some data analysis when I was at Clemson, and I showed that a direct PhD, so you skip the master's, versus a master's plus PhD, the master's plus PhD shaves off almost a year. It's about 3/4 of a year faster. So if you want to graduate faster, do the thesis and then the PhD. A lot of that has to do with deadlines. Stuff happens when you have deadlines. But it also has to do with the fact that we're teaching you how to do research during the master's, and during the PhD, we're teaching you how to ask questions. Once you have the question figured out, doing the research is the easy part. But if you've never done the research before, that's still a hard part. Does that answer your question, Ridwan?
Yes, sir. So I also want to know that I talked with my uncle who works in Texas as an engineer, and I talked about the PhD and master's when it comes to employment. And he told me that PhD students are considered a bit overqualified for like industrial jobs mainly when that is the target. And they move towards the academic field, which is not my interest, but my interest is in the industrial field. So what would your advice be?
That is the urban myth, right? So like I said, most 86% mechanical PhDs go into industry. 14% go into academia, right? So the vast majority of PhDs. Oftentimes, small companies, small, medium-sized companies are where the most jobs are. They don't know what a PhD is, right? They assume that is this esoteric ivory tower, meaningless thing, thought experiment. And in working with companies, and I've worked with, I don't know, 70 different companies over the years. They generally start off thinking like you, or like your uncle, that a PhD is overqualified. All right, well, overqualified for what? You know, a master's degree, if you have a master's degree, what kinds of jobs should you be looking for? Jobs that advertise for a master's, or jobs that advertise for a bachelor's plus 5 years of experience, right? So for every degree you get essentially 5 years of experience. So a PhD is 5 years of experience plus the master's 5 years. So a PhD is a undergrad, a BS degree plus 10 years of experience. So you're going to be asked to lead teams. You're going to be asked to lead projects. You're going to bring ideas, not just respond to ideas. So your uncle is correct that there is still some of that stereotyping out there. It's becoming less and less and less so over the years. And if you are interested in going into industry, I would strongly recommend that you align yourself with a faculty member that has industry projects, that has industry engagement, that has, you know, lots of alumni that are in the industry that you're interested in. All right, it looks like Sampad has a question. Student, what advice do you have for students who have explored different topics in their undergraduate and their research intent doesn't clearly point out a single particular research topic for a PhD merit? Is pointing out a highly specific research intent in a statement of purpose a must for a PhD, or can they explore during their first years? So yes and no. So some faculty will zero in and say, hey, I am looking for a person that has experience building console simulations in a paralyzed environment. And so that's all they're looking for. They're not looking for a student that they're going to grow and develop and teach how to do that. Other faculty, I mean, so if you looked at my Google Scholar page, let me see, just to pull it up. So if we sort by year and we look at, you know, what kinds of topics we've studied, right? So engineering, design, education, requirements, culture, and industry, prompt engineering, comparing pre-service engineers to large language models, pre-registering a case study, practical use case and inter-rater reliability-based validation of concept maps, exploring the role of layer variations in artificial neural network crowds. You can see that I have a broad set of research, right? So I let my students define their research. We spend a lot of time doing it. But since they define it, they're going to be exploring it. And there are lots of other faculty out there like me. So you don't have to say, I want to answer this specific research question. I, quite frankly, don't trust anyone's research question in the first semester that they've been, as a grad student, let alone coming in with a research question. All right. Some faculty will positively resonate with the exploration that you're needing, and some faculty will be negative to it. Sampad, you're not going to make everyone happy. Sorry about that. Other questions or thoughts? We're over time, so I'm assuming Shantae is going to interrupt us at some point, but we'll keep going until she drops the hammer. So remember, this is going to be the next, 3, 4, 5 years of your life. Make sure that you're going into it and you want to have some fun. It needs, whatever topic you work on should be interesting enough to help you power through it, but it is not going to be what you're going to do for the rest of your life. I am not working on CAD query languages anymore. I'm not doing feature-based submarine design anymore, right? You evolve, you grow, you do different things, okay? Find something and someone that you can enjoy working with. That's the key.
So I have one question that what is PI, which is the principal investigator, is actually looking for in the applicant?
So oftentimes, a faculty member that has a large project funded, many times they won't bring students on until after they get something funded. Now they are committed to NIH, to the Air Force, to DARPA, whatever, to execute this project. And if they're going to execute this project, they need to, get it done. So now they're going to be looking for people with specific skills, specific background, and they're going to be honestly thinking about them more as employees and workers rather than students. I know that sounds hyper cynical. And there have been times when, I've been hit with lots of projects hitting all at the same time, and I have to go recruit lots of grad students. But I personally never recruited a student for a project. I recruited a student for the group, and then I would put students on projects, and we kept exploring until we found the right for them project. So just the PI will have different motivations, and you can be honest and ask them, what is your motivation? What are you looking for? All right, I'm done. That's a subtle hint there.
Okay, can everyone see the agenda? I can't see if it's what's being shown.
Yes.
Yes.
Can see.
Okay, excellent. All right, thank you. Well, first, before we end, thank you so much, Josh, for sharing your wisdom today. And thank you for taking the time to answer all of our students' questions. Students, thank you so much for coming to the session today and participating. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your morning. So I just really fast want to show you the agenda for the rest of the week. Again, please make sure that you are a registered participant. So this is our last session for today. Tomorrow morning will be first thing in the morning will be how to fund your graduate education. I will be leading that session and we will talk about all of the internal and external funding opportunities. So I would definitely encourage you to set aside some time tomorrow morning to come to that. And then if any of you are on the call that are interested in materials science, definitely make sure that you come to that session later on tomorrow morning. Also, I want to make sure that you guys stay connected with us. Let's see, I don't know why it's not going to the next screen. Here we go. On our social media platforms. So remember, all of these videos are going to be uploaded onto our YouTube channel here. So at UTD Jonsson Grad, you can find all the past videos. Definitely look at our other social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter or X, and LinkedIn. We'll be posting the schedule there as well. But also on these other social media platforms, we'll be posting anytime I get new updated funding opportunities, I post there. So if you're wanting to stay on top of funding opportunities, you definitely want to make sure that you start following us. Funding opportunities as I mean, obviously we talked about funding here. It's always a major concern for our students. So we want to make sure that I'm constantly keeping you guys in the loop of the different funding options, but also events on campus. We talked about the PACE earlier this morning. So if you're interested in possibly getting an opportunity to come to campus at the end of February, this is going to be your resources. Our social media platforms are going to be the resources of when these opportunities will arise. So definitely make sure that you're following us. And then last but not least, we talked about this morning. Here is our QR code for the application fee waiver. So there are some eligibility criteria for the application fee waiver. It is only valid for the 2026 academic year. It only applies to the $75 application fee. It is only exclusive to the Jonsson School graduate programs. And it must be completed by October 24th. There are no late forms that will be accepted. I should also note that I should not be receiving application fee waivers right now because the application fee waivers are for those that attend the sessions. So if you've submitted an application fee waiver, it's going to get denied. The eligibility criteria is that you attend our virtual showcase over the week, whether you attend it live in person or you watch the sessions. A lot of the sessions, you can't answer the questions until you've actually attended them. So please keep that in mind. If you have questions, definitely make sure that you reach out to me via email and I'm happy to answer those. We'll be showing this information throughout the entire week. So, and then at the end, on Friday, after our last session, I will also be sending this information to all the registered participants. So definitely make sure that you are registered. And as long as you're registered, you'll be receiving the Zoom links as well as this information at the end of the week. All right, guys, thank you so much for your time today. I apologize that we're a little bit over, but I think it was a great conversation, good questions. And we look forward to seeing you the rest of the week. Have a great week. Bye.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Miss Shanti.
You're welcome. Thanks.